Yeah, remember the name. Jazz Takhar, best in the game. Mamba mentality in his own lane. So better pay attention to what he be saying. Get the message, ain't no question. Giving advice for any investment. Welcome to the broadcast, the Jazz Takhar podcast.
So we've been trying to do this for a very long time, and it's I have to be honest, it's on me. Your team was amazing, so big shout out to the whole crew that helps make so much happen for you, Richard. But I had to cancel a couple of times because the first time we were still in construction at the office. I was going to plan to do this with you there, and then I got into this crazy idea of taking a condo, building it into a studio, and I said I'm going to have Richard come here to do this. Couple of things I want to cover with you today. One, because you're so like entrenched in the real estate world, like obviously from a real estate coach perspective, helping real estate agents, mortgage advisors do their things for years and years and years. So we're obviously going to get to that. But when I say entrenched in real estate, I mean like the market. Like when I watch your videos, I'm going to, like, full transparency, I rip off your videos. I listen to them, I watch them, I take the stats, I understand them, and then I regurgitate most of it, because the way that you have like articulated yourself over time and how much you know about the market, it would be crazy for me not to get your take, because my viewers and listeners are 50% real estate agents and 50% like real estate investors, more than home buyers and home sellers. But so I think I definitely want to get that. Before all that though, give me that origin comic book story of Richard Robbins.
Okay, this is going to be really fast.
Yes.
Okay. Born in Peterborough, started selling real estate when I was 24. I worked for my father before that. I went to college and I left after 3 months, and it wasn't because I graduated early, if you know what I'm saying. So
I completely understand what you're saying.
So I get into the real estate game at 24 years old. 27, I moved to Markham, where I still live today. And I opened a real estate company, and I had that right up till 1996. So from 1988 to 1996, I had a real estate company. Then I sold that, and I stayed with the company I sold it to for, they wanted me to stay for 2 years. And then in 1998, we opened Richard Robbins International. And I'll tell you, it's really interesting how it all happened. But I remember when I had my real estate company, because at the time, listen, I can tell you the first 3 years were painful, right? You know what I mean? You're born on MasterCard and Visa and all that sort of thing. But once we figured it out, I absolutely loved watching my agents succeed. And we ended up having the highest production per agent of any company in our trading area. And so anyway, there was a lady by the name of Nancy Etche.
Okay.
She was one of my agents. I think she's still in real estate today, actually. And she said to me, she goes, you work so hard coaching and training us, why don't you do this for more people? And if you can believe it, that was the seed of the dream of starting Richard Robbins International.
Did that sound crazy to you at that time though? Like,
well,
or did you, like, were you always kind of that, like if I ask your friends from high school and I won't go talk to the college people, but the high school people, like would they say, yeah, Richard was kind of made for this. Like this is who he kind of was. Like,
I don't think they would.
Okay.
However, I've always believed in goals and dreams and let's go out there and do something really cool in the world, that sort of thing. I guess I've always been sort of ambitious, maybe. But I remember when I was a kid, I used to, New Year's Day, I remember my grandma, she's since passed, but my grandma, my mom and dad, and all the kids, I used to hand out pieces of paper and get them to write down their goals for a year. And I mean, I was probably at the time, I don't know, I was 20 maybe, you know what I mean? I mean, I was young, and why I did that, I don't know. So, so I don't know if the high school kids would have said that. Yeah. Because you sort of, when you're hanging out with them, you're trying to be cool, right?
100%.
But with my family would definitely say that.
Okay. Yeah. And this agent obviously saw something in you, right? Mm-hmm. So you got this company. How has real estate changed since the company? Like, I know that's a very vague question, but I'm going to start bringing it kind of down to the micro. But what was different back then? Like now we have all these real estate agents that have just, been part of Toronto Real Estate Board, part of the Ontario Real Estate Association. There's 76,000. A lot of them are new. Like they don't understand that things were a lot different back then. Give me that like 2-3 kind of, things that you saw and that you see now that are different.
I would say the biggest change is because of technology. Because I remember like offers like, you know, an agent will phone you up,
Yeah.
you know, back in the day, like, you know, I mean, phone you. There wasn't a lot of texting or emails back then. And you know, I got an offer on a property. You'd phone the seller. You'd have to arrange for the seller to go over and see the seller. You'd sit and present the offer. That would take an hour, right? And then you'd ask the agent to go outside. Then you make the changes to it. They run back and forth. Like it used to go on. Like I remember getting home at 2 and 3 in the morning because you started to negotiate at 8 o'clock.
Is that where the irrevocability came that people do at 11:59 p.m.? Right? Like,
oh yeah, it was like I remember that, and I remember sometimes I'd wake up in the morning and I was so tired from the night before, and then of course many times you're disappointed because if you think back to the, you know, when I opened in '88, and then of course the '89, '90s when the market got really, really tough. Like the first 5 years in the '90s were really difficult in real estate. So there was all kinds of inventory. So not all offers were going together. It's not like what we've experienced here over the last, you know, number of years. So it was difficult. You know, wake up in the morning and you're disappointed the deal didn't go together. It was only, you know, $1,500 apart, and you know, you'd phone the agent back and you say, man, we got to figure this out. We got to get this. So the biggest thing now is, you know, real estate to me today, because of technology, is so much easier than it was back then because it was so time consuming back then, right?
well, you also come from, and I'm definitely not trying to age you, brother, but like, there was no MLS.
No, well, there actually,
well, like there was, sorry, but it was in books.
it was in books.
Yeah.
So and before books, believe it or not, they were tear sheets.
So I don't know about this. What is that?
Okay, so what used to happen, now I'm going back to about 85 now when I
Right.
first started. So what would happen, this is in Peterborough.
Okay.
So the Peterborough Real Estate Board every day would deliver these tear sheets. So what was 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and it was like, you know, you could tear it vertically and tear it horizontally. So there was 4 listings, okay? And what we'd have to do is we'd have to rip those apart and then go into our binders, okay? And you'd have to put it in an order that you wanted to be able to find it really quickly, right? Everybody did that differently. But then let's say there's a price change. So imagine this.
Right.
Price change. A tear sheet would have the price change. So you'd have to find the old listing, you'd rip it out, you'd put the new listing in. That was the system. Right?
And what about solds? So what happened with solds? Like the same thing kept
Same
coming tear
thing.
sheets as well.
Tear sheets would come and it'd say, you know, sold, or it'd say conditionally sold, or whatever the deal was, right? And you're sitting there and, you know, you go in, you find that one, pull that one out, you'd write some in the sheets, and you wanted to keep the old ones because that was your evidence of sales that had taken place, right?
Right.
So I used to have books of all the old solds, like, and so every day, part of your job every day was take 30 minutes, right? And every agent in Peterborough, and I'm sure it was the same in Toronto, got these tear sheets every day.
It's funny because sometimes I walk through like the bullpen area in my office and you hear people F this, F that, because MLS just went down for like 20 minutes, right? Like comparing it to back then. I mean, it's crazy. You mentioned, Richard, 90s, early 90s, the market in itself was completely different. I guess, you know, I actually want to go down the path of not only like what your crystal ball forecast is going to be, but this market that we're in right now, is it different than what it was in the 90s? Is it similar? You're talking about inventory. Time of this recording, it's August 2022. We're starting to see more inventory come up on the market. I know I haven't went back to compare exactly like 1990 August to today in terms of months of inventory. What are some similarities and some differences? And this is really for my investor that's driving right now and listening.
Like, we're too early for me to tell if it's going to be like the 90s. But what we have to realize back, I remember it was in 89, it was sort of, you know, early in 1989 where, honestly, Jazz, it was crazy. It was like one day the phone stopped ringing. It happened like that. How, I don't know. It was just like all of a sudden everything stopped. And Dana Richard, who was my partner, and I said, what's going on, right? Because we just opened in October of 88. This is about February, March of 89.
Okay.
You know, here we're renting space. We don't have a lot of money, you know, and we were trying, and all of a sudden the phone stopped ringing. And that, I remember that so clearly because this one week it was just dead. And then from there, it started to compound, right? And, you know, rates were relatively high back then. Like, if I remember correctly, they're like 11, 12%, right?
Yep.
And we were dealing with the same thing. If you think about the only thing that's ever caused sort of a real estate recession is interest rates. Like, if you go back in history, it's always rates, right? Well, back in, you know, sort of around 90, we had an inflation problem back then like we have right now. So what does the government do? They start raising rates, and that's what caused our market to fall. Now, I look at it now and say, well, are we going to see the same thing? And I'm not 100% sure yet because we're not far enough in.
Right.
Because if you think about the rate hikes, especially the last one, to me it was like the perfect storm to have incredibly slow summer because the summer's slower anyway, right? August is always a very slow month in real estate. So rates go up, right? At one point that they went up and everything shuts down, but also because it was summertime as well. Right, so you've got these two sort of stimulus that shut the market down. So what I'm interested to see is what happens this fall, because the fall to me is going to be the telltale.
And fall, do you mean because of like what we normally see in the fall market, or because we also know that the Bank of Canada is meeting September 7th, or right, in terms of rates?
Yeah, like I would suggest we're going to have another rate hike. I would suggest that's going to happen. But when I say I think the fall is going to be the telltale, because now everybody's getting back to their normal lives, kids are back at school. Because we haven't seen inventory rise that dramatically, which in the 90s, that's what we had. We had tons of inventory.
Would you say, I always tell the story about and explain seller's market, balanced market, buyer's market. We currently, I guess you can kind of say we're in most areas in the GTA, we're in a balanced market. It's that 3 months and plus inventory, 3 months and less. You're in a seller's market, 5.5 months, 6 months and above. You're in a buyer's market. Back in 90s, strong buyer's market.
Strong buyer's
market.
market.
Like we're talking 6, 7, 8 months of inventory.
Prices were going down.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe, because everybody was competing to sell. You know, so when you get up, and I can't remember the exact numbers of inventory, but I'd say we're probably operating with 8, 9, 10 months of inventory.
Crap.
Right? So
I've been doing this for 17 years, and I have not seen that.
No.
I haven't even seen a buyer's market, really.
No.
Like, there has not been 5 or 6 months. Sorry to cut you off. Yeah.
Well, that's where, you know, as a trainer, coach, where my greatest concern is, because we've seen some blips.
Yes.
Like 08 was a blip. You know, U.S. got killed. Canada fared really, really well, right? So we've had a couple blips along the way, but they've been blips.
Yeah.
Like, so that's what I'm saying. If we experience what we experienced in the 90s, and by the way, don't think we will, but if we experience in the 90s, my concern as a trainer coach is what I'm going to have to do to help these people through it, because so many people have never experienced it. Imagine this, Jess. Just imagine that only 1 out of 10 properties are selling every month. Now think about that. So you go to market, you get a buyer comes out, there's 10 properties that they could choose from, and only 1 is going to sell, 9 are not going to sell. Right? It's almost the opposite of what we've been dealing with. Like 29 offers, only
You're
1
taking the
wins,
words out of my mouth. I was going to go there.
28 lose,
Exactly.
right? Well, it goes the other way. So if you have 10 homes that are competitive, like they're competition with each other, well, what do they do to get their homes sold? They all start competing on price. So all of a sudden, somebody has to sell. When that person has to sell, right? Well, what are they going to do? Lower the price. So that's what happened a lot in the 90s. So back to doing offers. Can you imagine, like, you know, like not a lot of offers went together.
Right.
So you're 2 a.m. trying to negotiate an offer, right? And I don't know what the number was, but maybe you can get 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6 to go, because they said, well, okay, if they don't want to take that house, I'm going to put an offer in here. Oh, you know, I'm going to put an offer. That we used to go through that all the time. That was our job, right?
Because you've seen this a few times now, including the blip in 09. I've always liked to say that recessions and just times of uncertainty, the pandemic, you know, that we're just, I think, gone through. I think it's complete, or sometimes it's not. I'm not 100% sure, but compelling opportunities start to present themselves.
Right.
Especially if you have a little bit of stomach and in terms of taking on some risk. This is not for everybody, this little portion that we're going to kind of talk about now. You do need to have a stomach for it. Where do you possibly see that there might be some compelling opportunities? And not necessarily like geographically, I'm asking you, Richard, but like, what can an investor possibly do, or what should they be doing in times of you know, like, it's a recession. I know the States have a new term for it, and they want to kind of hide it. I don't think our final numbers here in Canada have come in for like 2 consecutive quarters yet, but it's safe to say that we're going to see a decline in GDP again. Where do you see possibly that investor, like putting on your investor hat, saying, okay, hey, like if you do this, if you look for this, you might find some compelling opportunities?
Well, it's like, we know the stock market over the last little while hasn't done very, very well. So I was talking to a guy the other day, and he said, oh man, I've lost a lot of money in the stock market. I go, well, what are you doing? He goes, well, nothing. I said, well, put money in. Like, you know what I mean? If it's down, what you should be doing is like getting a bunch of money in there, right? And taking advantage of that, because if you go back in history, we always know that everything goes up and down. So the same thing in real estate. Like, we're coming into a time, probably the next, I don't know, 3, 6, 8 months, where you're going to see some opportunities out there. Like, not everything's going to be an opportunity, but there are going to be some opportunities, right? Now, it's an awful thing to say, like, somebody else's pain is somebody else's gain. But at the end of the day, there's going to be some people that, possibly.
And it's why I started to say, rather than take advantage, because I felt like that too. Like, even during COVID, I was like, I don't like saying like taking advantage, because it's an awful thing to say. So what I've started to say is compelling buying opportunities.
100%.
Like, my clients have heard it. They know where I'm coming from. It's full transparency with them. But yes.
Yeah, so I think if you keep your eyes open, you're going to see some great opportunities, because some people are going to be forced into having to sell, right? It's like this. It's like, I use the same tailor since I was in real estate, like forever, right? Because my office used to be down the street, right? And he's a great guy. He's a really good. Actually, it's his son now that runs it, but he's a great guy and a good friend. So anyway,
hey, to the listeners, this is why you need to get to the app and watch the full video, by the way, because otherwise you're not going to see his drip, as the kids say.
I've always been a bit of a close hound, but anyway, that's definitely one of my things. But anyway,
and the best hair in the real estate business.
That's right. Go. I've actually had people come up and grab it to see if it's real. But anyway, that's a whole other story. So anyway, he calls me when he gets new stuff in, right?
Okay.
And he goes, okay, I got the spring, the fall, or whatever, and if I'm in the mood, I might go over and visit him. Well, I don't know what his markup would be, but his markup's probably 100%, right, or more, or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But when he also calls me is where everything goes on sale, because he says, by the way, I'm putting all my summer stuff on sale. If you want to stop by, I got a couple of things I think you'd like, and then it's 40 or 50% off, right?
And do you go?
Yes, I do. Oh, 100%.
Because I know this is very important. You go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I go.
Yeah.
So I said to him one day, I said, why do you call me when stuff is on sale, right? Like, wouldn't you call me when it's, I'm paying full pop, right? And he goes, I got to get my money back so I can buy other stuff, right? And that is the analogy of taking advantage of compelling buying opportunities, right? You're really helping somebody else out, because they have to get out. Right, so when I think about that, I always think about my tailor. It's the same thing. Like he's willing to do 50% off because he wants his money back so he can go out and buy.
Yes,
right.
And one of the reasons I mentioned and why I asked you, Richard, like, do you go, is because Holt Renfrew has a sale people run.
Yeah.
The like, we're here in the shops at Don Mills. There's tons of stores. Shoe sale at Brown's, 15-20% off. People go running. I've been screaming from the rooftop since September 2020, so 5-6 months into the pandemic, that downtown Toronto went on sale.
Yes.
Condos went on sale, 90 cents on the dollar, 85 cents on the dollar. 100%. I was screaming it. Yeah. That doesn't exist anymore. Like, now it's probably back to what, prices were before the pandemic, and people didn't run. Interesting. They went to go save the 50% off of shoes, but when real estate actually went on sale, not everybody was actually running to it.
It's because everybody's trying to time the market, which is impossible. Do you know when the market hit bottom? After it's already gone back up, right? Because by the time you don't know it hit bottom until it started to rise, right? Yes. It's just like you don't know it peaked until when it starts to come down, right? But it's no different than the stock market, the real estate market, or whatever. Like you said, it takes some guts. When is Warren Buffett buying stocks? When everybody else is selling. That's when the opportunities are, right? And it's hard for a lot of people to do, because they go, well, if I put money in the stock market, it might go down more. I said it might, but then maybe put some more in. You know what I mean? And play the game.
You could have bought a parking space in downtown Toronto in the last decade and made money. Yes. That's $25,000 back then, and it's close to $125,000 now, right? And so people always do ask, like, where should I put my money when it comes to real estate? My answer, love to get your take on it because you've been doing it even longer than I have, is as long as you're investing into a place where there's population growth, there's job growth, if you can find something where two levels at minimum levels of government have actually put in money into infrastructure, which is all kind of saying the same thing, which is location. Transit for me is number one.
Yeah.
and you have the long-term mindset of holding on to that property, you don't have to try to be Nostradamus and try to figure out what the future. You know that in a decade, on average, in the greater Toronto area, and probably in most areas wherever you're watching or listening, it's going to double.
Yeah.
You're going to buy something for $500,000 and it's going to be worth $1 million. That sounds weird that it's going to be worth, or today, if you're going to buy something for $1 million today, it's going to probably going to be worth $2 million in a decade.
Yeah.
And where I think most people, where it sounded weird to them was when, like, the fact that how is my place going to be worth $2 million? Well, you also didn't notice that blueberries are going to cost $50 or whatever the new price of blueberries are because of that silent killer, which is inflation.
Right. I totally agree. It was funny. I just closed a building about 3 months ago. It's a building for my office.
Okay.
Right?
Congrats.
And so, thank you. So my wife said, after we bought it, she said, "Do you really think we should be buying real estate right now?" I said, "Hun, 10 years from now, we're going to look like a hero." Could I have got it for 100,000 less or something at the end of the day? 10 years from now, who cares?
Yes.
Even 5 years from now, probably, who cares, right? Like, you won't even think about it back then. So everybody, it's like the old saying that sometimes people are so busy picking up the pennies, all the dollars are going right out the window, right?
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
Yeah,
I like that. It completely
they
makes sense.
Yeah, they get so caught up. I had a conversation with my brother yesterday and about this exactly, right? Because, I said to him, he's from Peterborough, and I said, let's start buying some stuff in Peterborough or something. We were just having that conversation. He said, "Do you think it's the time?" I said, 10 years from now, it won't matter. 15 years from now, it won't matter. Even 7 years, it won't matter. Like,
I know my client's listening, Adnan, and I'm going to shout him out because him and his wife, 10 years ago, were sitting at 16 Yonge, the condo that he purchased, $339,000. We're in the lobby doing the offer, and we're going back and forth if we should give them the extra $1,500. Literally, you said $1,500 earlier, and that's what clicked into my mind. And we're going back and forth. First time home buyers, I completely understand. This guy and I, we used to sell shoes together, like 25 years ago, right? And we're going to talk about the importance of databasing. This is for my real estate agents as well. I mean, Richard's huge on that. $1,500, we're going back and forth for probably about 2.5 hours. That place, they ended up buying it. They gave the extra $1,500, but I still remember both of them were like shaking while they were signing. It's worth a little over $750,000 today. Like, even if they paid, to your point, Richard, an extra, $5,000, $8,000, you wouldn't have been counting that. I've made the mistake really recently, actually, about 3 years ago in my principal residence. I put a bunch of upgrades into the principal residence. Like, I'm living there. That's my home. It's my family home. My wife wanted a couple of things extra. I didn't spend the extra 20 grand on increasing the height in my basement. Because I felt like, okay, shit, I'm getting stretched out with all the other stuff. But $800,000 I bought, $850,000 I bought the house. It just got appraised for 1.7.
Right.
And I'm kicking myself as well. Like, oh, I should have spent the extra $20,000 because it probably would have appraised a little bit higher as well, right? So just that long-term thinking is so important.
Oh, it is. Like what the story you just told about your friend, that $1,500. If he hadn't have paid that $1,500, it could have cost him hundreds of thousands.
$350,000, $375,000.
Yeah. So when you look at it, you go, like, that's, my wife said, it's a good time to buy. I said, 10 years from now, it won't matter. It's perfect. Right? You know what I mean?
And look, for me, it was like not looking at things as an expense and looking at them more of as an investment. Right. Invested $1,500 extra, made the extra $350,000. And big shout out to your beautiful wife, Sue, because she does a lot. I've had the opportunity to meet her a couple of times. And so I know
she runs the company.
I know she does. When I say a lot, it's pretty much everything, but I didn't want to.
You ever see the movie, The Big Fat Greek Wedding?
Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Yes. I think it was,
this is going back a while now.
Long time ago.
Yes.
Well, I remember the guy who was sitting there and he said, "I'm the head of the family," right? And I think one of the kids said, "Yeah, but mom's the neck moves ahead." That's my relationship, right?
Gas was there when we came to your event as well. He noticed it as well. Let's speak to our real estate agent friends. Mm-hmm. I always like to throw mortgage brokers in there as well because we're very similar. We're like cousins in the industry. I'm huge right now on my 54 agents on two things. is going back to basics is number one. And basics to me in sales, because I'm the shoe salesman, paper sales guy, paper boy at 12, shoe salesman, then I worked at the bank, and then did car sales and real estate for 17 years. One thing that I've always done in that whole time period, other than when I was selling newspapers, was back to basics to me means meet people, get on the phones. Hence why you see the red phone. It's here. It's part of like the set. Yeah. We decided only to have the phone because that's what you need to do. You need to make phone calls. The number two thing is actually create content.
Yeah.
And shoot content that's more from an educational perspective, 100%. Not the look at me, look what I sold, and look what I listed, because that kind of feeds you, your mother's, your family's ego. Not like what we like to do, and what I like to do is go out, give educational tips, like give it all away.
100%.
What is like, where's your mindset now and I didn't mention this, by the way, and it'll probably be in the write-up somewhere. The gentleman that I'm sitting with right now, ladies and gentlemen, is by far the biggest real estate coach in the country, hands down. I have some friends in the States that I don't want to alienate, so I'm going to say one of the top, though, real estate coaches in North America. Like, this is the guy. Yeah. That's why I wanted to do this with you. My team tells you just to talk a little closer to your mic as well, Richard. What are you telling agents right now, man?
Well, almost what you just told me. Okay, because think about the last few years. So, once we get into COVID, market went crazy, as everybody knows, right? And when the market was so busy, what happens is people move away from the basic fundamentals of success because there were opportunities everywhere. The pie was growing, right? It was getting bigger. And so all of a sudden, when the market starts to shut down, we have to get back and we've got to start meeting people, talking to people, right? Visiting with people. And I've developed a concept called the triple play. And the triple play is where you pick 3 ways of proactively reaching out. Okay? So
this is new.
Yeah.
Just so everybody knows, I've been following Richard for a very long time. I went to his events. I've done all the Richard stuff. This one's new.
This is newer, okay? Because I'm thinking this is what I mean. Get back to the basics. Okay. So first of all, let's pick 3 ways. Maybe telephone call, right? Texting, emailing. That's 3. Triple, right? Or maybe it's telephone calls, texting, sending videos.
Okay.
Right? So pick 3 proactive ways to reach out to people, not reactive. You're not responding to somebody else's email.
That doesn't count.
We got it really clear on this.
We're
not responding to somebody else's text. We're not returning somebody's phone call. We're proactively reaching out to people.
If someone says,
right?
"Come list me my house," that doesn't count.
No,
I like it. I like the proactive.
Play.
I also like, before you go into it, that you're giving people options.
Right.
Like it's not these specific things. It's pick 3. Continue.
Pick 3. Right. Okay. And then what you do is you say, okay, and how many times am I going to do each one per day? So I'm going to do 10, 10, and 10. I'm going to do 5, 5, and 5. And you do that 5 days a week before noon. Now, I know this sounds simple, and we've talked about this forever, but I promise you over the last few years, guess what everybody has not been doing? They have not been doing that, right?
I don't even think some of them have been doing a single, let alone a triple.
Right. So we call that the triple play, right? Okay. And then, of course, if you put a deal together, if you get a signature, which could be a listing or could be an offer, obviously, then you got a home run that day, right? So everybody's, I'd say, try to get a home run every day, right?
Yes.
But what we're saying is like texting, like it is so easy right now to text your customers and just say to them, listen, I just wanted to check in, see how your summer's going. Obviously, been a lot of changes in the real estate market. If you got any questions, I'm always here, right? Or maybe to say, hey, I just want to check and see how your summer's going. Do you have time for a quick call? Right? Like, just start doing that on a regular basis. Do the same with email. Or maybe you're going to start to send people videos or whatever the case is, right? And we've just got to start reaching out to people because you can't tell me that the buying and selling public don't have tons of questions about real estate right now.
Real estate agents do. I mean, you and I have questions.
Right.
We're in the industry. We eat, sleep, breathe this.
Right.
Let alone what the public's thinking.
Right.
And I always like to think that if we're not controlling the narrative, so you as a real estate agent, mortgage broker, I can tell you who is.
Yes.
CP24,
right.
680 New, and all these guys in the media, I don't knock them. That's their job. But the unfortunate part is that they're just putting out headlines, and our people are not actually delving into the actual articles or the videos, right? And so, all your years in coaching. So I love how you gave the tactical stuff. So like everybody who's watching, listening, if you're somebody who can actually take like action, you can stop listening to the podcast now, because go do exactly what Richard just said. Do one of those proactive plays. But I know, and you know, and your coaches, your team of coaches know that there's something that stops people from doing one of those three things or all those three things, which are very simple. And I know that's more of a mindset thing, but what is it that you have noticed after all these years in the business that you've been in, like that stops people from actually doing it?
Right. Well, first of all, I've always said real estate is simple, but it's not easy. Okay? Like it really is simple. You know, prospect every day, set an appointment, it really is simple, but it's not easy to do. And I believe that we're in a society where instant gratification is killing our dreams a little bit.
Okay.
We're always looking for that dopamine hit. You know what I mean? If I go back to when I was first started in real estate, like I used to lock myself in a room, but I didn't have anything to bother me, right? All I had was a dial phone, just like that one there. It was just a different color. It was black, right? And I'd sit there and I called dialing for dollars. That's how I started prospecting, right? And I think we are so distracted today, right? And first of all, let's face it, a lot of people, well, I don't like calling people, I don't want to sound like a salesperson. I said, listen, all you have to do is reach out and just say, I just want to check in. How's your summer going? How's the family? Believe me, they're going to start talking about real estate. You don't even need to bring it up.
Does this stuff sound familiar, Parsa? Like, Ro, like we're doing this for agents, the exact way that we started. So continue.
So you don't even need to bring real estate. They'll bring it up. Don't worry. They're going to bring it up and start talking about it, right? But I think the main reason is because I just find people right now in terms of attention span is like gone, right? And so I say to just do yourself a favor. Lock yourself in an office, okay, for 1 hour, right? I mean, shut everything off, right?
No ding off on that email even. Yes, yes.
Shut it all off. Get rid of all those red circles, those notifications, right?
Yes.
Because it's proven that, we have become addicted because we get a dopamine hit every time it happens. So I think everybody has the right intentions, right? The challenge is we are so distracted today, and everybody is distracted today, because as soon as you pick up your phone, there's so many things you can look at, right? You think I can hit Instagram, and it goes on and on and on. So my recommendation to everybody is the same thing. It's like I was working on a talk yesterday. I'm writing a brand new talk, right?
Okay.
Well, when I'm creating content like that, when I just got to sit and think and research and all this sort of stuff, I can't have my phone near me.
Got it.
It's not like I try to avoid the distraction. I can't do. I got to eliminate the distraction.
Right.
I got to get rid of it. Like, so I actually go put it somewhere else.
And do you still probably till this day lock yourself in some type of room and just stay away from everything? And
100%. I go, right? Because that's the real work. Like for me, my real work is always developing content and trying to, like right now, what am I focused on? Well, we got an event coming up in November. I've got a couple speakers who are going to be out doing talks and selling tickets. What does the audience need to hear right now to help them the most, right? That's my job. That's what I do. I study what all the agents are doing. I talk to my coaches. We've got, our coaching clients are the greatest resource in the world for us, right? Because we find out what they're doing. That's my real work, which, by the way, is the hardest work in the world to do. What is the real work of a salesperson? Prospecting. That's the real work, right? But everything else is going to be more fun.
You're right.
Right?
Showing properties.
Like
$1 million listing,
right?
Whatever city you want to.
They would rather show a property to an unmotivated prospect that will never buy, right? And get on the telephone.
They get the feeling that they're doing the work.
It's called being busy. You're not productive, right?
We're not, exactly. And so when you say prospecting, like that gets my juices flowing. I love that shit.
Yeah.
You spoke about calling and just starting the conversation. It's so true. Like when people say to me, I don't want to make the phone call because I don't want to, I don't want to ask the question, Richard, are you thinking about buying, selling, or investing? I'm like, don't ask that question. You don't need to ask that question. You can just say, start off with the most simple thing, like, hey, how you doing?
Yes.
How's everything?
Yeah.
Where's your headspace? What we're saying a lot to our clients right now, I'm just curious, like, where's your headspace right now in terms of what you're hearing or watching about the real estate market?
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, we did 3,000 focus calls in 30 days, Richard.
Yeah.
27% connection rate.
Yeah.
We wrote a little over 14 deals. A lot of calls to just write 14 deals, but the market shifted.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we know we need to do. And the amount of data we got out of the 27% of people that we connected with, like, you ask those open-ended questions, where's your headspace at with what you're watching and listening to? People start talking, and it's 100%. All over the place. And I don't even think, one thing that I've seen some of my agents do and other agents do is get into a battle. Mm-hmm. No, Richard, you're wrong about the market. I can tell you right now, you might win this battle. You'll lose the war with them. But I think just like hearing people out, some of them are not wrong. Like, they're scared.
Yes.
They see a headline in the news that says sales are down 49%, 50%. Well, the home that they just bought at $1 million, they think now it's worth 500.
Right.
Because they heard sales are down, they thought and if we're not going out there as agents and really whatever business you're in and actually educating people, someone else is going to do it for you.
Somebody's going to do it, and unfortunately, it might be the media.
Yes.
And we all know what bleed reads. It's always going to be negative news, but headlines don't sell houses, right? So it's up to us, and I agree 100%. And like right now, I'm saying to everybody, get in touch with people, talk to them, find out what's going on. You're probably not as busy as you were. We'll take that time. And there's an old discipline I had many, many years ago when I was in real estate, and it was appointments with myself in the morning and appointments with others in the afternoon.
Oh, right? I still do this. I took this from you for years. Yeah. I still do this. It's the best thing that I do.
It was like a religion to me. So appointment with myself, okay, get up and try to get some exercise. That sort of thing, right? That's with me. I'm not meeting anybody else for that, right? And then I used to go into the office, and Dana and I both used to do this. We used to close our door. His office beside mine. I could hear him on the phone. I was on the phone, and the first thing I would do is phone any leads that I have and try to set an appointment. Right? I didn't just phone them. I phoned them to try to set an appointment. Like, hey, beautiful home just come up for sale. Do you want to go see it this afternoon? Like, just something like that, right?
Yes.
Then the second thing I would do is I would start phoning all of my past clients. Okay. Everybody in my database.
So you kind of went hot leads, and then warm people in your database. Okay,
right? Because my first objective was my goal was to set an appointment every day. Right? That back then, Dana and I, he had to get an appointment. I had to get an appointment. If we did an appointment every day, we had 10 appointments a week. Now, 20% might cancel. So you might only, you know what I mean? How it all works, right? Sure. And we had all our numbers. We knew what we had to do every single day, right? So I wanted to go where I could probably get the appointment first, because then I had a sense of accomplishment, right? And maybe it was just pricing a house. Maybe it was showing a property. Maybe it was just a face-to-face.
Just get me face.
I wanted to get in front of somebody, right? And it didn't have to be that day, but I booked an appointment. Right. Maybe it was on Friday. I was doing the calls on Monday. I just wanted to book an appointment, right? So I always start with my hottest leads, right? Okay. And I used to carry, this is really funny, I used to carry around a red binder. And inside the binder, because this is way back, right?
I love it. But some of this, like these, they call them whatever, old school techniques or whatever. They still work.
Oh no, they still work. And I used to have these.
We sometimes make it confusing with all this technology. Continue,
So it was a red binder. It wasn't very thick, and I had two sets of dividers inside. I had January to December, and then I had 1 to 31. Okay, and then anytime I found a lead. Right? Someone might phone you up, hey, what's the price? We're thinking of doing something in 6 months. We're just wondering all that sort of stuff. So I had this lead sheet. I'd write all their information. I'd put information about their house, what their motivation is, where they're going. And then let's say it was, right now it's August. Right. So let's say I wanted to call them back in September. And I would write on the sheet the day I want to call them back. I'd put them under the September tab, right? And then when I got to September, I'd pull all the September ones out, and I wrote the date on the sheet, and then I'd put under 1 to 31. So I'd go in the morning. If it's the 22nd of September, I'd open up 22, and there's all my calls.
Just call them right now.
Right. So I would just sit first thing in the morning, and I'd write down, what we talked about and the whole thing, and then I might have to move that to another month or next week or whatever the case was. And that was my system, as simple as it is. And I carried that red binder, and I wanted it red because it was represented hot.
I love
this is my hot leads, right? And
it's funny. I had something similar. Mine was green because it was like green
money.
gold.
Yeah.
Money,
like
right?
money.
Obviously, yeah.
And I carried that everywhere I went. And every year, I used to be able to do a couple double enders, because here's what would happen. Somebody would call me up and say, Rich, I'm looking for a house, right? And instead of going on the MLS first, I'd look at my lead sheets. I'd just start flipping through them. I go, that house might work, right? And then I'd phone those people and say, listen, I got somebody right here that might be interested in your house. And I bet you every year I did 3 to 4 double enders from that book, right? As crazy as it sounds, bring 2 people together.
Right.
Right.
And to the newer people in the business, that is what we call a CRM.
Right.
Customer relationship management. There's all
Right.
these fancy words.
I know.
And people ask, what's the best CRM? The one that you actually friggin' use.
Yes.
Richard just used paper.
Yeah, that's
and so
all
that's
I
what I
did.
love about it. Yeah. In the afternoon, now the appointments yourself are the showings, are the listings. I just wanted to kind of finish
Yes.
that thought of yours.
Yeah.
Like, so that's when you're actually doing offer negotiations. That's showing properties and everything.
Right. So what I would do, well, in the later years, I was just working with listings anyway,
Got
so
it.
I didn't show up. But yeah, so what I would do is I'd get to noon. So my morning was committed to talking to people, trying to book an appointment, right? And anything that was like highly important work, right? And then I'd usually go for lunch every day and grab
Perfect.
some for half an hour. And then
Yes.
from 1 o'clock to whenever, I worked, right?
Okay.
And I did my very best to try to get my work done during business hours, right? But again, you had to have so many meetings back then. You don't have to see people as much now because of DocuSign and everything. So it wasn't always possible, but that was always my goal.
And is that how, and I might be giving a resource that I don't know if you give anymore, but I'm going to kind of maybe throw you and the team under the bus, and I apologize for it up front, but there was something that you had for a very long time, and you did give this out to everyone, which was RRI, Richard Robbins International Simplified, where you broke down all, like, the goal was always appointments. This is how I know you're not full of shit, because I know, and now I hope people also understand that I'm not, that I actually know what his work is, where you broke it down that the most important thing for you to do is book appointments.
Yes.
And for me, in my early part of my years, I used this resource that you had. It was a one-pager, and how much you want to make and how many deals and all that. But the fact that you called it simplified and made it so simple, because it was like, just focus on your 3 appointments a week.
Yes.
That work will get you back up. Is that kind of the thought process behind that?
We still use that. It's called Goal Setting Simplified.
Got it.
Right?
Okay.
And so now it's all digitalized and everything.
Sure.
But you know what I mean?
Yes.
You're right. It was just a piece of paper one time. But the whole idea is this. I think we get, and it's so easy for all of us to get confused, right? And you say, well, at the end of the day, okay, you want to make X number of dollars, right? And whatever that number is. Well, we can quickly figure you want to make X number of dollars, right? Well, how many deals do you need to do? Because you know your average sale price, right? So how many deals do you need to do? So, okay, that's how many deals you need to do. So then we go, well, what percentage buyers, what percentage sellers? And you start breaking it all down. And then we can figure out, okay, if you went on 10 listing appointments, how many would you get? Well, I'd probably get 8. Okay, that's 80% conversion. We put that into the formula. And basically you just, put in all these numbers. And at the bottom, say your goal is make $250,000 or whatever. At the bottom, it spits out a number for you that says how many appointments you need to do a week. Now, we've all heard this before, but I believe our focus becomes a reality. We quite often get in life what it is we're looking for. How many people wake up every Monday morning and think to themselves, I need 3 appointments this week? 3 appointments. If I get 3 appointments, I had a hell of a week. Doesn't matter if I got a listing. Doesn't matter if I did his deal. Doesn't matter if I got a commission check. If I got 3 appointments, I'm going to hit my goal. So our theory as a company is let's simplify your focus. Because if you're walking through every day looking for an appointment, guess what you'll probably find, right? An appointment.
The red car,
It just
you buy the
happens.
red car,
Right.
you see them everywhere.
Because all of a sudden, you and I are having a conversation and you start talking about real estate or something. One of my things, I go, I need to set up an appointment with Jazz, right? So, hey, Jazz, this is a great conversation and everything, but you're probably wondering what your home's worth. Why don't I stop by and tell you? Because now I'm focused on getting face-to-face, right? So that was the whole concept of that. And then, of course, you'd say, how do you get the appointments? There's a million ways to do that, right? But picking up the phone works, texting works, all that sort of thing. And then you got a really easy focus. So, and by the way, if you got 3 appointments by Thursday, or you got 3 appointments by Wednesday, and you don't feel like working the rest of the week, who cares?
You get to design your business around your life in that sense. And, and if you want to go harder, you can go harder. Don't judge yourself. Go either way. I mean, Richard, to most people, like what you just went through, and you said your focus becomes your reality. there's the most people call it like the law of attraction. I like to speak about like the law of vibration a little bit more. They just think it's so like foofy, philosophical out there, but the shit is real. If you believe it or not, like if you believe in the law of gravity or not, that's the phone's like, it's going to do its thing. Right? It's going to do its thing. I don't know if you catch that on video or not. Yes, you'll figure it out later. I'm sitting here. I came to one of your events, I'm going to say probably about a decade ago. Okay. Paramount.
Paramount, you're right.
Woodbridge. So whenever that kind of opened up, that's when you shifted maybe doing, I think there was, I don't know, 2,000 people there or something. Like it was friggin' huge. Okay. Like I'm in the back. I just kind of came a little later. I'm in the back. You're up front, and I'm watching you speak, do your thing, and I'm like, holy shit! Like, I wonder if like I'm gonna ever sit down with this guy. Like, I wonder if I'm gonna be on stage. Fast forward a decade. Like I've been thinking about stuff like that. I got to speak on one of your stages. Thank you for that. I'm sitting with you now. The stuff actually works. Like unfortunately, if you put your mind on negative shit, you're going to get more of that as well. Right. And so I don't know like how you help someone understand that more. Cause I wish I could give somebody an injection for them to understand like whatever you focus on, you will bring about.
Well, we call it like it's another tool we have. It's called Future Focus, right? So, and again, I've done this myself. This isn't stuff I just sort of oh, here's a good idea, let's try that. This is basically what I've really done most of my life. And here's how it started. I'll never forget was my first year in real estate in Peterborough. I had a good year. Like I was 24 years old. Like I was making more money than anybody in my family had ever made in my first year. Like it was crazy.
Get a lot of trouble. 24-year-old making money. I get it. Yeah.
And now I was working like 20 hours a day, but whatever. Well, after I hit a goal that one year, and it was my manager Don Harriman that sat me down. And so what happened? I walked in the office one day. Don Harriman's there. We're coming into a new year. I'd been in the real estate business since July. We're moving into my first full year, January to December. He goes, how much money you want to make next year? And I had no idea. Like I said, well, I don't know. He goes, well, pick a number. And to impress him, I said $100,000.
Okay. And that was still a lot of money back then. A lot of money.
Average house was $40,000.
Okay,
you know what
exactly.
I mean? Like it was a lot, right? You know what I mean? Back in those days, that was a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, he said, okay. He goes, so what I want you to do is wake up every morning, and I want you to remind yourself how much money you want to make, and then ask yourself, what do I need to do today to move towards that goal? Now, I didn't really, there was nothing crazy. I didn't write it down, nothing, I got it, thought about it, blah, 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 and I'm going to get Donnie, whatever you think. The end of the year, I made $102,000, okay? And because I just kept thinking about that goal. And if he hadn't asked me that question, I don't know what I would have made. Maybe 40. I don't know. You know what I mean? Because
you wouldn't have thought about it.
I wouldn't even have thought about it, right? So I got depressed. I went into the next year, like I was sad. It was awful, right? So I went to my family doctor. Okay? His name was Dr. Kasky. He looked after our whole family. I went in to see him and I said, Doctor, there's something wrong with me, man. I don't know. You got to check me out. I'm freaking out, right? Like physically there's something wrong with me. And so anyway, he does the whole check out and he goes, I don't know. I think you're fine, right? And then he started asking me questions and he started saying, I see your name in the paper. You're in real estate now, aren't you? I said, yeah, I am. And he said, well, boy, really good for you. What got you? And we just started talking. He goes, well, how long? I told him about 1.5 years now. And he said, so how you enjoying it? I said, oh man, it's just so much fun. I said, I made over $100,000 last year. Like I was so proud. I want to tell the world, right? And now I spent $150, but that's another story. So anyway, so he said, well, good for you. He says, you made more money than me. That's what he said, a doctor, right? And so this is a kid that left college after 3 months, right? So anyway, and he said to me something. He goes, well, what do you got planned this year? And I remember I looked at him and I said, I haven't really thought much about it. And he this is a doctor. Like this probably wouldn't happen a lot today because you don't have that much time with them. But back then you did. He goes, I'm just thinking to myself, you had a really good year. You're not motivated right now. You probably don't need, money this month, that sort of thing. He goes, I think you got to go decide, set some goals for yourself. Well, I went home that day and I sat down at the kitchen table and I wrote down everything I wanted to do before I died. Now, some of it was...
Wow, you went down that that far out.
I did.
as well.
I said, I just wrote down and I said, what do I want to do before I die? That's what I wrote on the top of a pad. It was just a white pad. And I just started writing crazy, crazy stuff, right? Now, a lot of it was crazy.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of it after I looked,
I think that's important, right, Richard? Because
Yeah.
you didn't stop your brain.
Right.
Like, you just kept going. Right. Like, there's no
Yep.
right or wrong. You didn't give that moment in between to say, this is a dumb idea, Richard. Like,
Right.
that person on your shoulder.
Just let her go.
Let her go.
Let her
Okay.
go, right?
Yes.
So I wrote all this stuff down, and then I wrote down, because I remember Don asked me how much I want to make. He didn't ask me that year. You know what I mean? So anyway, I wrote down how much money I want to make. Bingo, I go out and start doing it all again. Now, one thing I wrote down on that pad was I wanted to fly a fighter jet.
Okay.
Okay? I flew a fighter jet.
Wow.
I had no idea how I was going to fly a fighter jet, but I got asked to speak in South Africa. And I landed in South Africa. My dad's with me, right? So we turned into a little bit of a trip. We check into the Sheraton Hotel in Cape Town, and on the table, right in front of the couch, there was a book. You know those magazines they have?
Yeah.
And on it, it said, fly a fighter jet in South Africa. Now, I had written this down 20 years before, but I still had it on my list, right? So I look at this, and of course, then I go out that night with dinner with my dad. My dad knew it was on my list, and he goes, you see, you can fly a fighter jet here. Maybe this is it. And I had phoned to find out how much it was. And it was a fair amount of money.
Sure.
So I said to my dad, I said, I phoned, it's like, $7,500 US. Like, oh my God, that's a lot of money. I can't afford that.
Yeah.
So my dad, he worked for us many years, wonderful, wonderful
Got
man.
it.
And he looks at me, he goes, oh, Mr. Motivation Man, eh? Oh, yeah. The guy tells everybody else to go chase their dreams, and you got that right, and you're not going to do it. Well, guess what I'm doing 3 days later? I went to this place called Thunder City. So think about that concept there, future focus. So since then, I do it digitally now, but I have this journal, and I still have all the things I want to do before I die. And every year, I just set certain goals, right?
Yeah.
But what I do is I get up every morning, and the first thing I look at in the morning is that journal, right? And then I do some journaling, but the first thing I do, because I've got it pinned at the top, is I remind myself of those goals. Because I have proven to myself beyond the shadow of a doubt, you can write the weirdest things down. But if I hadn't written down that I wanted to fly a fighter jet, I would never noticed that magazine. You see? The reticular activator.
Yes.
When there's something in your head, when there's a desire in your head, you see the opportunities. Another example. If you want to make $1 million, right? The ideas are all there to make $1 million. You want to make 100,000? The ideas are all there to make 100,000. The minute you go from 100 to 1 million, guess what ideas you start to find? The $1 million ideas, not the $100,000 ideas, right? Like the world is abundant.
Yes.
It's all possible, right?
Yes.
I truly believe that. But some of us, we're just keeping ourselves too small, right? And people could argue maybe I'm keeping myself too small.
100%.
Like all of us, right?
Yeah, all of us.
All of us,
Yeah,
right?
for
I can
sure.
look at other people and I go, boy, look what they've done, right?
Right. And I mean, there's SCITO, which stands for Stop Comparing Yourself to Others, because there will always be somebody has more than you. There'll be people who have less than you.
Right.
But to your point, I mean, the reticular activator system in your brain has been there long before Google.
Yes.
And the reason I use that analogy is because, like Google, when you give yourself a question, your brain will find the answer.
Yes.
It's just some people are not patient
Right.
enough to hold off. Like you want to try to bring a cup of coffee into your life, that might happen in an hour or a day. When you're looking to build $1 million business, well, give it some time.
Yes.
Like you can't like go to the backyard work out one day and then look in the mirror and say like, where's my muscles? They'll laugh at you. Like, are you new to this? Like this stuff takes time, right? What else right now excites you, man? Like what's going on in your life? I want to know, and then we'll talk about your training program and all of that.
Well, it was funny. My wife and I, we every quarter we have a all hands on deck quarterly meeting with all of our staff.
Okay.
So, we start with 10-year vision and we move it back, and then we get down to what deliverables in the next 90 days to keep moving us towards whatever it is we want, like the company, right? So anyway, we're sitting there the other day and we're going over the 10-year vision. Well, 10 years from now, I'm 71 years old, right? Because I'm 61 now. And the team sort of looked at me and they said, like, really, Rich? Like you're going to be here in 10 years? I said, well... barring something crazy, I plan to be sitting in this building, right, in this boardroom,
in this
10
chair.
years from now, because Because something that, we talk about at our events is building a business and life you love, right? And if you build a business and life you love, what do you want to retire from? Right? Because you're, like we've talked before we started recording, I happen to have a place. I'm lucky enough I got a place in Florida. I got a nice house here. I'm a member of a golf course here and in Florida. I like to play 1 or 2 rounds of golf a week. I still love my job. I love to work. I got 2 grandkids. So I'm excited. And I have other goals, but I'm excited about continuing to do what I do, right? Because I still wake up, I think about it all the time. I want to do it. So what excites me the most is just the next 10 years. And like I said to the staff, I said, our next 10 years can be the greatest 10 years in our company's history.
And I wouldn't doubt it, man, because I've also seen how you guys have grown and adapted and brought so much more technology and just done really, really well in the last 10 years. I don't doubt it for a second. You probably don't know how many people you have touched in the real estate industry. I can speak for a lot of people where your name comes up, buddy, because you're like, sometimes you're doing large, huge 2,000 people events, and lately you've been doing them virtually, so it's even more difficult for you to kind of get that interaction. But your name is spoken very, very highly in this industry, and I'm very excited to see what your next 10 years is going to be bringing to you. Where does an agent start with your organization? Where do you suggest, do they just go to the website? Is there the next event that you want to talk about? What is the best way for somebody to get into your world?
Yeah, I'd say, well, obviously there's 2 things that we focus on as a company. One's events.
Okay.
And we have an event coming up in November. It's called Masters Academy. It'll be our first in-person event since COVID, because we've been doing a lot of virtual ones. We're very excited to get everybody back in person. We actually just had our members out in Whistler, all of our coaching members, to get them back together. So we're very excited about that. And it's a 2-day event. And I do some of the speaking, but I don't do most of the speaking anymore, because we had you at one of our virtual, right?
Yep.
Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to find the best practice of a real estate agent. We don't want them to teach everything. We want them to teach one thing.
Got it.
We got you to talk about content, remember?
Yes.
Because you're so good with content. So we're always trying to find what is the genius of that agent, right? And, obviously I think content is your genius. And we present those ideas in the stage, and this is how they're presented. Here's the idea. Here's the results the idea produces, and here's how to do it, right? So we want to get down to the granular level. So obviously, if you're interested, we'd love to have you there. And in coaching, a lot of people, the biggest thing we do is coaching, right? Because that's, every day we're coaching.
How does that look? I want people to go where they need to go, in terms of the links and stuff, but give them that, that Reader's Digest version on how does that coaching look for an agent?
Yeah. It's based on 3 things. Community. So RI is a community. We have this crazy, Facebook group where they're sharing ideas all of the time. We get together on a regular basis. They have VIP tickets to our events. We have a members day after. So community is one. Content, is the second. So in other words, what we're trying to do is help an agent identify what they want to build. Because until we know what you want to build, we can't help you build it. And then once we know what you want to build, then you work with a one-on-one coach, and they will give you the content, or the how-tos to build that, right? And then the third is customization, because we don't believe one shoe fits all. So we customize our program. So it's not like our coach is sitting there going, okay, this is call 1, here's what I do. Not that at all, right? Plus we have...
That's huge. I'm different than everyone else. I mean, the way that my strengths are my strengths, and God knows my 90s, the 97% of stuff that I suck at. I like the fact that you guys customize that and make it very, very, very personalized, essentially.
So that's sort of the 3 C's of what we do as a company. And then we have, training calls, and goes on and on and on. There's a lot of other benefits as well. But if any of the, the viewers or listeners are interested, the best thing they can do is just, you can go on the website, you can set up a call. It's just an information call. We can have a conversation with, one of our team members, and they'll ask you a whole bunch of questions. You probably ask them a whole bunch of questions, and then we try to decide, is there a fit here that will benefit our company and benefit them.
And what's the site? What's the best site?
RichardRobbins.com.
Perfect.
Just
Team,
go to
let's make sure we get that
richardrobbins.com,
in
yeah.
there. Richard, I can't thank you enough for taking the time, brother. Every single time I get to hear you speak, when we speak, one-on-one, I always learn something new. So my viewers and listeners know this podcast is completely selfish.
Yeah.
Completely selfish. It's about me learning more from people but allowing others to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
And I know you brought them a lot of value today. So thank you for everything you do, and thank you for today.
My pleasure. I'm glad we finally pulled this off and got together.
It took us a while, but we got it done, brother. Thank you, Richard.
Pleasure, man.